All right, hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study. I'm playing this simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. We're in Luke, chapter 21, and we're kind of doing a little slow crawl through this chapter because this is going to be one of the last chapters as we kind of move through the Bible that kind of deals with end times and um, at least from the gospel standpoint. And then um, as we go through some of the other books, we won't deal with end times um, like this, like, as Jesus is directly talking about the times of the end. Now, obviously, when we get to other books, we will deal with the end times. So Luke is giving his account of really the Sermon on the Mount in which Jesus is talking about um, what the end times is like, what his second coming, you know, um, what are the signs of his second coming. And it's kind of interesting because Matthew 24 gives us Matthew 24 and 25 gives us a more detailed account. It's important to understand that Jesus is talking about, or I'm sorry, talking to the Jewish people. And that's important because many people misinterpret. Oh, thing is here. All right. Many people misinterpret the chapter as a kind of generic for all people. So the church or whatever, but you get into a lot of problems with that. But also, I am sprinkling in the nonsense of the September predictions that you see all over the place. That there are people that literally are saying that from this perspective, less than a month, that Jesus could come back. And as I said before, the reason why they arrive at that is through faulty math, biblical numerology. They don't call it the Bible codes because the Bible codes, well, it's really not the Bible codes per se. The Bible codes, as they were taught a few years ago, were hidden message within the text. So that if you kind of go through lettering, spaced out lettering, you arrive at hidden messages, okay? And just so we know, God doesn't, that is not the purpose of the Bible. So right away, whenever you see these kinds of fuzzy math, hidden messages, you know it's false. What God said to us and communicated to us through scripture, he did it in a plain fashion so that we can understand it. He never meant for us, and he certainly don't think we're smart enough to be able to go digging deep and finding hidden treasures or hidden revelations, okay? People do that. And so now what you have is the idea that in September, again, you use some fuzzy math, get some numbers together that you can string together and come up with some calculated formula that in September. And then secondly, they use the Jewish Mosaic law festivals. So we're coming up in September is the festival of trumpets, the feast. It is a harvest celebration, and they use that to say this is what God is kind of his blueprint for, laying out a sign when he's going to come or when he's going to return. So, and in every case, I have yet to see people draw a direct line from their fuzzy math to how they arrive at 2025 as the year. Okay, so let's jump in it. Matthew 24. All right, I want to kind of go back and read. Let me see. I think I'll go back and I'll read from the beginning. So that we can be up to speed. Here we go. Verse 5 says, as some were talking about the temple complex, how it was ordained with beautiful stones and gifts dedicated to God, he said, these things that you see, the days will come when not one stone will be left on another that will not be thrown down. And this statement actually came to pass in AD 70 when the Roman general Titus leveled Jerusalem. Verse 7, teacher, they asked him, so when will these things be? And what will be the sign when these things are about to take place? Then he said, watch out that you are not deceived, for many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and the time is near. Now get that, the time is near. September, right? The time is near, right? It says many will come and say that the time is near, right? And is that what people are saying today, that September is going to be the month? He says, don't follow them. When you hear of wars and rebellions, don't be alarmed. Indeed, these things must take place first, but the end won't come right away. And then he told them, nations will be rise against nations, kingdom against kingdoms, and there will be violent earthquakes, famines, plagues in various places, and there will be terrifying sights and great signs from heaven. But before all these things, they will lay their hands on you and persecute you. They will hand you over to the synagogues and prison, and you will be brought before kings and governors because of my name. It will lead to an opportunity for you to witness. Therefore, make up your minds not to prepare your defense ahead of time, for I will give you such words and a wisdom that none of your adversaries will be able to resist or contradict. And you will be betrayed by parents, brothers, relatives, and friends, and they will kill some of you. Then you will be hated by everyone because of my name, but not a hair of your head will be lost, but in your endurance gain your life. Now, so there should be any kind of surprise when you suffer persecution. We in America, we are fortunate, we are blessed because of the nation that we live in. And that's not to say that it couldn't end. I would say that when you have a group of people, that have such an evil heart, that have such, excuse me, power hungry, power driven, and you get them into positions. So if they control both houses, if they control the Supreme Court, and then they are able to affect change in the laws itself, those conditions exist as we speak. So don't ever think that it can't happen. But we have enjoyed our freedom that it doesn't happen. There are Christians who are suffering in dictatorships, okay, and those that hate Christianity. Verse 20, he says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by the armies, then recognize that its desolation has come near. So it said this can be a double fulfillment. I think one in AD 70, but the ultimate fulfillment is when Jesus will come, during the 7-year tribulation period. He said, those in Judea must flee to the mountains, those inside the city must leave it, and those who are in the country must not enter it. But because these are the days of vengeance to fulfill all things that are written, woe to the pregnant women and nursing mothers in those days. But there will be great distress in the land and wrath against his people. Again, the ultimate fulfillment of this is during the 7-year tribulation period, during Daniel's 70th week, when in Matthew's, of course, account, where he says, when you see the abomination that makes desolate, and then you see the same thing, flee to the mountains of Judea. Woe to the pregnant women, verse 23. Woe to the pregnant women and nursing mothers in those days, for there will be great distress in the land and wrath. Now get this, against this people, referring to the Jewish people. Okay, and if you go back to Daniel 9, the 70 weeks, he said, are decreed about against Israel, Jerusalem, and the temple. He says they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led captive into all nations, and Jerusalem will be trapped by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. It's interesting, that statement, until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So what are these times, and when are they fulfilled, which would signify the end of the age, okay? Signify the end of the age. Then he says, then there will be signs in the moon, sun, moon, stars, and there will be anguish on the earth among nations, bewilderment by the warring seas and waves. People will faint from the fear of expectation of things that are coming on the world, because of the celestial powers will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and great glory. So make no mistake, this is the sign of the coming of Jesus, in which we will say it's the second coming of Jesus. Every eye will see him. There is no coming in the spirit. There's no coming in the desert. Every eye will see him. And then he says, but when these things take place, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is near. Whose redemption? Jerusalem. Verse 29. Then he told them a parable. Look at the fig tree and all trees. Now, I kind of dealt with this again, that have been some wild interpretations that the fig tree means Israel, and that when you see Israel bud as a nation, that is an insertion unto the text right here. And as you can see, it just doesn't say that. So the fig tree, he says, look at the fig tree, and then watch this, and all trees. As soon as they put out leaves, you can see for yourselves and recognize that summer is already near. And that's what happens, right? Unfortunately, we're coming to the close of our season. But what happens during the spring? All of a sudden, right? You look up and there's leaves on the trees. What does that tell you? Summer is approaching. That's what it tells them. That's what he's saying right here. In the same way, when you see these things happening, recognize that the kingdom of God is near. And then he says, I assure you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Now, again, a lot of people interpret this as being Israel. So the fig tree being Israel. Thus, in 1948, when Israel became a nation, well, hey, we're just a generation away. And then some people, for some reason, decided, and again, I don't know where, I've never seen how they can look and say 40 years represents a generation. I just never heard anyone point to any passage that defines a generation as 40 years. And if that's true, we've already went past 20. I think we're over 70 years now, so we're in the second generation. We're in the second generation, and not too far away from going into the third generation. But the idea is that what are the things that he was talking about? Well, all of the things he just talked about, all of the terrible things that's going to happen, all of the climate catastrophes, and the people being the persecution, the destruction of Jerusalem. That when you see those things, he said, that's when you know that the return of Christ is near. But look at verse 34. He says, "Be on your guard, so that your minds are not dull from carousing, drunkenness, and the worries of life. On that day, or that day will come on you unexpectedly like a trap, for it will come on all who live on the face of the whole earth. But be alert at all times, praying that you may have strength to escape all these things that are going to take place and to stand before the Son of Man." So the question we can ask here is first of all, is this talking about the rapture? And then can Christians miss the raptures? Well, first and foremost, this passage, the entire chapter, as well as Matthew 24, as well as Mark 13, is not talking about the rapture is not mentioned in either of those chapters. So that's the first thing. The rapture is not mentioned in all of those chapters. I think what I may do is I'm debating here. I'm debating. But anyway, let's first talk about what this is talking about right here. Be on your guard so that your minds are not dull from carousing, drunkenness, and the words of this life, or that day. So what is the day that he is talking about? Or that day will come on you unexpectedly. So what is the day? And remember, he says that the day will come upon you unexpectedly like a trap. So when you look at what he's talking about is let's kind of go back and look at something here. Verse 22, he says, "Then those in Judea must flee to the mountains, those inside of Judah must leave it, and those who are in the countryside must not enter it, because these are the days of vengeance to fulfill all things that are written." So he goes on and expresses again what happens on that day, or the day of the Lord. It's a day of vengeance. That's what it is right here. A day of vengeance. And then he said to fulfill all that is written. What's the other phrase right here? "Woe to the pregnant women and nursing mothers in those days," right? In those days, "for there would be great distress in the land," and get this, "and wrath against this people." So now he's warning them down here to not fall into sinfulness, so that day, the day of wrath, the day of vengeance, come upon you unexpectedly. And then he says, "For it will come upon all who live on the face of the earth." So when you think about the tribulation period, that's going to be the day of the Lord, the day of wrath, that what will be poured out. Notice this, on all who live on the face of the earth, including Jerusalem, including the people of Israel. But notice this, on the face of the earth. And if you want to do some extra homework here, Revelations chapter 6 through 19 tells us what that day of the Lord is going to look like. Okay? So, again, if you keep this in context, you understand, again, the events and how they line up. The problem, of course, is people try to insert the rapture in here. He's just not talking about the rapture at all. So that's why I said, will Christians miss the rapture? Well, one, I don't believe Christians will miss the rapture because they are truly Christians. Okay, but you can't go by this verse because this passage here is not talking about um, the rapture of the church. Um, okay, verse 37 says, during the day he was teaching in the temple complex, but in the evening he would go out and spend the night on what is called the Mount of Olives, that all the people would come early in the morning to hear him in the temple complex. All right, so I'm debating if in the next study I may go in a little different direction and explain why the rapture of the church is not in Luke uh, Luke 21 or Luke 21 or Luke 24. I'm debating whether or not I'm going to do that, so I will kind of decide what. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought, a comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. And I'll see you in the next study.